Sane Occultism by Dion Fortune. Narrated by Matthew Schmitz. 12. The LeftHand Path. Those who interest themselves in occult science constantly meet with the warnings concerning the avoidance of the left-hand path. They read of black occultism and dark initiators, and many other items calculated to make the flesh creep. A wholesome respect for the powers of darkness and a disinclination to trifle with them is a sound basis from which to start the investigation of supernormal phenomena, but panic-stricken ignorance does more harm than good. The warnings to neophytes are usually as vague as they are pretentious, and afford little practical assistance when the student is actually confronted with an abuse of occult knowledge. The subject is not a very savory one, and for its comprehension, plain speaking is necessary, just as plain speaking on other social problems was necessary for their remedy. A hush-hush policy gives evil its opportunity, whereas, if the matter be understood, the back of its power is broken. Black occultists may be divided into two classes: those who deliberately say to evil, "Be thou my good," and those who stray onto the left-hand path more or less unintentionally, and, having got there, stay there, often deluding themselves. We will deal with the former class first, because they afford a clear-cut illustration of the workings of spiritual evil. Those of the second class represent every grade of modification of these same principles. They are, of course, not so dangerous as the true devil worshippers, but they can be very harmful and unpleasant. Fortunately, the Christs of evil are as rare as the Christs of good. Supreme achievement in any walk of life is attained by but few. The initiate of the right-hand path is God-centered. The initiate of the left-hand path is self-centered. That is the prime difference between them. It is the point which determines whether a soul will turn to the right or the left when it enters upon the path. Further occult development is but an unfolding of one or the other aspects of the nature. The initiate of the left-hand path is aiming at power for self-gratification. He is dangerous to contact because he is out to use his pupils, not to serve them. He is utterly unscrupulous and entirely selfish, and there is not very much left of a life after he has finished with it. There are three motives which prompt him: greed, lust, and desire for power and knowledge for their own sake. He seeks to open the psychic faculties, both in himself and others, by speedier and less troublesome means than the slow ripening of mind training and meditation, and for the achievement of this end he employs drugs which unloose the girders of the mind and give it a temporary expansion of consciousness. Now, it is one thing to unloose the girders of the mind, and quite another to get the rivets tightened up again, and unless someone is prepared to go through life rattling like a cheap motor car, it is unwise to seek this method of development, speedy and effectual though it is. However warmly a system of drug-taking may be recommended as entirely harmless, the neophyte will be wise to refuse it, for it is based on a fundamentally wrong principle, and the after results of even a single experiment may be very far-reaching. To open these psychic centers and contact other planes does not constitute the whole of psychism. It is necessary to know how to approach and handle that which is contacted. Drugs do not confer this knowledge which only comes with experience, and therefore, although they indubitably can open the subtler planes to the experimenter, the opening is of so undesirable a nature that it is far better avoided. Again, the neophyte may be assured by friends in whom he has confidence that they have made the experiment without ill results. This may be true, but there is a factor known to physiologists as drug virginity. The evil effects of any abnormal stimulant or sedative do not become apparent at once. If they did, there would be no drug addicts. One can hardly conceive of a person becoming an addict to tartar emetic. It is the cumulative effects that are toxic, and because the drugs which alter consciousness are habit-forming with various degrees of speediness, the risk even of experimentation is too great. Moreover, a dangerous astral contact may be formed at the very first experiment. It may be taken as axiomatic that anyone who suggests the use of drugs for raising consciousness is definitely on the left-hand path and had best be avoided. An adept may also offer to open the psychic centers of his pupil by means of hypnosis. To this method, two objections apply. The first is that which we have already considered in relation to drug illumination, that although it admits to the subtler planes, it does not confer the powers of the planes. It is equivalent to starting up the engine of a high-powered car and sending an inexperienced driver straight into city traffic without even showing him which is the brake and which the accelerator. Secondly, after a person has been brought well under hypnosis 2 or 3 times, he is pretty much in the hands of the operator, and even if that operator be motivated by the purest intentions, the proceeding is very disintegrating to the pupil. In medical work nowadays, deep hypnosis is very little used for this reason, psychologists preferring to rely on suggestion. It should be noted, however, that although after repeated hypnotic sleeps, the hypnotist can often throw his subject into trance by a word or a look, this is not possible in the first instance. No one can be hypnotized without his knowledge. It requires cooperation and generally a determined and patient cooperation for the first induction of hypnotic sleep. The unwilling victim has merely to put his thumb to his nose, and the would-be dark initiator is completely floored. I saw a great deal of remedial suggestion done by qualified doctors in the days when I worked at a mental clinic, and although there was no doubt about the ascendancy that could be established over a patient when once the hypnotic sleep had been induced, to induce it was not at all a simple matter, even with the patient cooperating to the best of his ability. I noticed, however, that the personality of the hypnotist had an extraordinary fascination for the patient, and out of that fascination, many subtle and undesirable reactions proceeded. I have seen a good deal of psychoanalysis, and I hold no brief for it in its cruder forms, but there is no doubt about it that there is a very great deal in analytical psychology, and the more I see of human nature, and especially psychic human nature, the more I realize it. An accusation of hypnosis may be but an inverted way of saying, "I love you." When such a charge is made, it is well to inquire concerning the modus operandi employed. Such an enquiry will soon reveal to those who know the real thing whether there is any foundation in the charge or not. Such charges are not lightly to be accepted. Hell knows no fury like a woman scorned, and the romancings of hysteria could have kept Harun al-Rashid awake indefinitely. When the story is told with highly colored accompaniments, it is generally safe to suspect it. In real life, such happenings are sordid and matter-of-fact in the extreme. But although I discount the story of hypnosis by force, I am well aware that one person can obtain a very great influence over the mind of another, and have often seen it done. I am of the opinion, however, that such a domination rests on the victim's trust and confidence in the dominator, and that when these are thoroughly shattered, the domination does not last long. I am disinclined to believe the victim's assertions that he is entirely helpless in the matter, despite his realization of the nature of his thraldom. When the bond is realized but not broken, there is either a lingering fascination or the victim has been privy to matters which would cause social ruin if they came out, and the dominator knows too much to be defied. The best way to escape from any such domination, when once it has been established, is to seek the help of some common-sense, stable-minded friend, well endowed with worldly wisdom and experience, who will not unduly stress the psychic side of matters, but encourage the victim to pull himself together, admit his share of the responsibility, and cut his losses at any price. If he fears publicity, should he turn on his tormentor, let him remember that his enemy has probably very much more reason to fear publicity than he has. If he follows the advice which the caterpillar gave to Alice in Wonderland concerning the puppy dog, and says to his tormentor, "You let me alone, and I will let you alone," he is unlikely to hear much more of the matter. An unwilling victim is a nuisance. The black occultist ensnares his victim through the weaknesses in that victim's own nature. The get-rich-quick spirit prevails in many souls who seek initiation, and they desire to reap where they have not sown. It is not difficult to fathom the psychology of most of those who get onto the left-hand path and stop there. Those who resolutely refuse to play with fire seldom burn their fingers with black occultism. I am not saying that entirely innocent people, especially if they have but a superficial acquaintance with the subject, may not have unpleasant experiences at the hand of a black occultist, but it is my experience that the suspicions of a right-minded man or woman are quickly aroused, and they beat a retreat in the early stages. When people become deeply involved in black occultism, They usually have to say mea culpa before they get clear. This does not mean that those who realize a mistake and retrace their footsteps are not deserving of all help we can give, but in approaching them, we ought to exercise the same precautions as in saving a drowning man, and take care that we ourselves are not involved in unpleasantness, for anyone who has come under the influence of black magic, even if he desires to break away from it, has probably undergone considerable deterioration of character, and is apt to be a very uncertain friend until his wounds have had time to heal and he has got the poisons out of his system. He will be suspicious and treacherous, liable to revert to his old ways at any moment, and turn suddenly on his benefactor and rend him. His mind is very likely to be more or less unbalanced, and he is liable to delusions of persecution. It is no light undertaking to rescue a soul from the clutches of a black magician. In fact, it is just like rescuing a cat from a dog. In its terror, it will probably scratch and bite at the hands that have saved it from the jaws. Occult salvage is not a task for the timid, the emotional, or the imaginative. It requires a level head, calm judgment, patience, and firmness, as well as the knowledge necessary to meet the black occultist on his own ground and withstand the occult retaliation, which will probably be forthcoming. But, God be praised, there are those who will do it, and greater love hath no man than this, for there is every reason to fear those who can destroy the soul as well as the body.